she's so fine. Hell of a blows my mind. Hell of a lights my day.
What's good, guys? This video will be regarding the Rasheem Carter case. I've done that story several times on this channel, and I wanted to cover it again because there have been some new things that have come out, and I specifically wanted to show you guys something that I found very interesting in a picture. For a refresher, on Saturday in October, early October, the very beginning of the month, Rasheem Carter, 25-year-old black man who was visiting and working in rural Taylorsville, Mississippi, called his mom, Tiffany Carter, in a panic. Some white guys were following him in 3 trucks, he said, and yelling racial slurs. He was fearful that they would hurt him. His mom, Tiffany Carter, who lived 2 hours away in the town of Fayette, Mississippi, stayed on the phone with Rasheem as he went to the Taylorsville police station for help. She specifically heard him tell the officers that he was being followed and asked them for a ride back to his hotel, the Super 8, in Laurel, Mississippi, which was about 20 miles away. She specifically heard the officer tell him no. He used the excuse that Laurel was out of their jurisdiction, and he also, the friendly officer that he was, told him that they weren't a taxi service. She heard someone say he could not stay at the station, that he had to leave. Now, the next morning, Rasheem Carter, still scared, returned to the police. Again, he felt as if the officers brushed him off. He pinned his location to his mom, and she sent a family friend to pick him up, telling him to wait for the ride. But when the friend arrived, Rasheem Carter had disappeared. Now, 1 month later, law enforcement discovered Rasheem Carter dead in a wooded area near Taylorsville on some private property. There were very few remains, only his skull and a small number of his bones, along with his driver's license and personal belongings like some clothes, a hotel room card, and an iPhone battery. The Smith County Sheriff's Department announced the next day that it saw no signs of foul play. Apparently, they didn't do an investigation because if the next day you don't make that decision after 1 day, that involves an entire investigation. The sheriff tried to convince Tiffany Carter that maybe her son was hallucinating or high and got dehydrated and died. She didn't buy it, just like I'm not buying it and nobody else is buying it. Rasheem Carter was too smart to go wandering onto some white man's land, and he was trying to get out of Taylorsville, not hang around there. Plus, medical professionals told her that it would typically take longer than 30 days for a body to decompose to bones. The sheriff suggested that buzzards and other wild animals ate her son's flesh. Now, the coroner in Fayette, Mississippi, who also is the head of the local NAACP, Kendrick McDonald, said what really had him baffled is how can they clearly convey that there's no foul play? You cannot determine the cause or manner of any death without any thorough investigation. Skeptical, Rasheem Carter's family began working with a private investigator who made several disturbing allegations, including that Rasheem Carter's bones were broken in smooth cuts, possibly inconsistent with an animal attack, and that his severed penis was found decomposed in his mouth. That's very personal. The autopsy report refers to fractures, but does not detail how clean the breaks were. It neither proves nor disproves the claims of genital mutilation, since the medical examiner received only bones. Now, Ben Crump, who is nationally renowned for his work on police misconduct cases, said the skull contained no teeth. On top of everything else, this PI that the family hired, who the family is declining to identify, claims that the law enforcement there mishandled the investigation and chose not to take Rasheem Carter's disappearance seriously, despite his earlier requests for help. Allegations that the Smith County Sheriff Joel Houston denies. He said, "We are addressing this case from every angle to get as many answers as we can for the family. If we find somebody who has anything to do with this, they'll spend their day in court." For the most part, however, the cops have remained tight-lipped. The sheriff stopped returning calls to the person who wrote this article after an initial 15-minute interview in February, and other law enforcement agencies have ignored or denied her request for comment, even as Rasheem Carter's family complains about a lack of transparency in the case. That silence has encouraged rumors. Kids in Taylorsville joke that a local resident fed Rasheem Carter to his hogs. And some residents believe Police Chief Gabe Horn is related to the man who owns the property where Rasheem Carter's bones turned up, something that Chief Horn would not confirm or deny since he wouldn't speak with this person. Says she reached out to the property owner, but a Taylorsville resident who shares the owner's last name told her that her family is related to the police chief and that she suspects her family is also distantly related to the owner of the property. But it's not just a question of family. Some of Horn's other connections in the small town have drawn attention. According to a source familiar with Taylorsville and its residents, who requested anonymity for safety reasons, the chief recently started grabbing coffee most mornings at local restaurants with a group of white men he's friendly with, at least one of whom has publicly made violent racist comments about Rasheem Carter and black protesters in town. The group started meeting after Rasheem Carter's death and bills itself as a sort of literature club, according to the source. A restaurant employee, who would not recall whether Horn was a member of the group, told her she wasn't sure what the club actually discussed. Maybe because it wasn't easy to hear them. When they talk, they are not talking out loud. They're bent over the table, whispering. Now, here in Kentucky, we call that the Good Old Boys Club. Facts. Rasheem Carter arrived in Taylorsville in late September, less than a week before he disappeared on October the 2nd. Back in Fayette, where his mother, Tiffany Carter, lived, he ran a seafood eatery called Cali's Express, named after his 7-year-old daughter that closed during the pandemic. But he had training as a welder and millwright and had come to Taylorsville to make some extra cash, snagging a short-term contract at a factory that processed wood from the region's abundant pine forests. As a black man, he faced risks working there. The KKK is reportedly active in the county, and several black Mississippians that this author spoke with described Taylorsville as a sundown town, saying they were afraid to be out after dark because of possible violence. The surrounding counties were historically a stronghold for white supremacists, according to William Sturkey, an associate professor at the University of North Carolina who studied the history of race in Mississippi and the South. The local KKK there was probably the most violent anti-black group in the U.S. during the Civil Rights era, he says. In nearby Neshoba County, in a case that became nationally known as Mississippi Burning, white supremacists conspired to kill 3 civil rights workers in 1964 after teaming up with law enforcement. Given that history, Rasheem Carter may have been afraid to seek help from the cops. One of Taylorsville's former police chiefs, who reportedly retired about a decade ago, posted a photo of himself on Facebook in a Confederate flag t-shirt, along with cover photos of the flag and Confederate leader Jefferson Davis. Today, only a handful of police officers work in the town. Most of all of them are white. Once inside this police station, Rasheem Carter gave them a false name. He was scared, says his aunt, Felicia Cajo, introducing himself as Larry Duncan before asking for help. Rasheem Carter told the officers about the white men in trucks and said he needed a ride to the Super 8 hotel in Laurel, too far to reach on foot. He normally rode with a coworker, but couldn't that evening. It's not common for a law enforcement agency to transport a citizen or anybody to another jurisdiction, Sheriff Houston told this lady that wrote the article of the police's decision to refuse Carter a lift. We are not a taxi service. It's unclear where Rasheem Carter spent the night, but he did return to the station early the next morning. The sheriff told this person that wrote the article that officers invited Carter to wait there for a ride, something that his mother does not believe, since she'd heard them over the phone the evening before telling him that he could not stay there. At some point, Carter asked the officers for directions back to Laurel and if he could borrow a charger for his iPhone, according to his family, who added that the police suggested he could find one at the gas station. The sheriff said in November that officers offered Carter a charger, but it did not fit his phone. He left the police and called his mother shortly after 10 a.m., warning her that his phone battery only had 1% left. He said he was in a dollar store and dropped a pin to his location so her friend from another town could pick him up. By the time her friend arrived around 1:30 p.m., Rasheem Carter was gone. In the days that followed, Rasheem Carter's family organized search parties. The dollar store's management showed them surveillance video of Carter walking inside and then leaving. But owners at a nearby gas station and some other businesses did not share footage. They said they rolled the cameras back and didn't see him. "How would you even know who you're looking for?" says his aunt. "Carter went missing in broad daylight," she adds. "For nobody to see anything, I'm not believing it." At one point, the family encountered Taylorsville police officer Brad White inside a store and said they wanted to view more footage. Officer White became defensive and suggested it wasn't fair to imply that the police were covering up something, according to the family in a TikTok video of the encounter, though he eventually allowed Rasheem Carter's mother to see the footage in question. Meanwhile, his auntie asked the department if its officers searched for Carter too. She says they told her it was a small town, but that they'd driven around but saw no reason to look for Carter on foot. When his mama first called the sheriff's department, she says its deputies had not yet been notified that her son was even missing. She said officers told her the family could continue looking for Rasheem Carter as long as they stayed off of private property. Nearly a month later, a property owner in Taylorsville alerted law enforcement that he'd found an image on his hunting camera of a man he didn't recognize walking on his land. It was Carter, and the photograph, according to Rasheem Carter's family, was taken around 4:25 p.m. the day he went missing. He had no shirt on. It looked like he had been rolled in the dirt or his pants were wet. He had a stick on his shoulder that he was carrying. He was looking like somebody was chasing him. Now I'm going to come back to this photo. Law enforcement say they brought in cadaver dogs that found Carter's body in a wooded area on that vast property, but they would not initially show Tiffany Carter, the mother, the remains. She wouldn't receive them until February or even photographs. As she teamed up with the private investigator, other rumors surfaced. Some locals gossiped that Rasheem Carter may have dated or flirted with the white daughter of a cop in town, a theory that could provide a motive for his death, and one that evokes memories of Emmett Till, the black 14-year-old who was lynched in Mississippi after allegedly flirting with a white woman in 1955. Both the sheriff and Rasheem Carter's mother cast doubt on this explanation, given that Carter was only in Taylorsville for a handful of days, though Till, originally from Chicago, was also a visitor in Mississippi for a week when he was kidnapped and tortured. Before disappearing, Rasheem Carter told his mother that a particular person he worked with posed a threat to him and should be a suspect if anything were to happen. The family also heard that someone withdrew money from Rasheem Carter's bank account 2 days after he went missing. The Sheriff's Department, which is leading the investigation, along with the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, pushed back against these theories. In November, Sheriff Houston told local reporters that investigators looked for evidence of a bank withdrawal, but that there was not yet proof of one. And this week, he claimed Carter's co-workers were not suspects because phone records and GPS coordinates showed their devices were far from Taylorsville on the day Carter went missing. "I want to dispel any rumors that are out there," he told people in February. "There's still a lot of unanswered questions," he quickly said. He also said that the private investigators' claims that Carter's genitals were mutilated were nothing but a hoax, but then added that it was impossible to know because only skeletal remains remained. "If you leave a dead animal out in the woods for a month," he said, "you can imagine what buzzards and coyotes and whatnot would do to an animal. So it will be the same condition for a human." As for whether cops still saw no signs of foul play, he demurred. "I'll leave that one for the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation to decide." After Carter's family spoke at a press conference, the sheriff told a reporter at NBC News that law enforcement had not ruled out the possibility of homicide. Funny how that works, huh? At a protest in December, Rasheem Carter's family heard another alarming story that a young child in Taylorsville made a confession in school about finding a body in their family's hog pen. Later, a video circulated of an older student at a classroom podium joking about Rasheem Carter's death. The police turned him down, but a local man's pigs didn't, the teenager says, as other students laugh. The boy describes how the man's pigs were chomping on Carter's legs and vomited his remains, which he says were then buried. He's got Rasheem's body parts in his yard, the kid adds, looking at someone in the classroom. So FBI, y'all need to go search his house. The children continue to giggle. The video horrified Rasheem Carter's family, who wondered whether there might be any truth to it. As a historian, I'm interested in the way that rumor and memory are operating here, says Justin Randolph, an assistant professor at Texas State University, who is writing a book about policing and white supremacy in Mississippi. Absent hard evidence at present, an idea of children saying these gruesome, torturous things occurred could be coming from any number of places and people's imaginations of what racial hate looks like, as well as the understanding that racial violence happens in the shadows nowadays. Whereas public lynchings were common prior to the civil rights era, racial killings became more secretive starting in the 1960s, says Sturkey, the historian. White supremacists developed a need to get rid of the body because they, by then, gave a shit about what the rest of the world thought about them killing black people, he says. Around that time, you see the Klan start to disappear people. This person that wrote the article said they tried to talk to the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation about the hog rumors. A spokesperson declined to comment. When she asked the police and sheriff, they did not return her calls. Now, in February of 2023, month before last, Rasheem Carter's family organized another protest, and they went to Taylorsville. A large group of law enforcement, most of them white, gathered across the street as the marchers, most of them black, walked to the police station demanding a better investigation. As the marchers returned afterward, a white man on the side of the road called out to them. I could not hear what he said, but protesters told me he made racist taunts. As they went to verbally confront him, several law enforcement officers flocked to the scene, telling the white man to stand back. This is my territory right here, he said, and urging the protesters to move on. Afterward, another white man in Taylorsville, James Ainsworth, posted a now-deleted racist message on Facebook. If they come back and threaten me again, I will be healed, and I will send the next black sons of bitch or bitches to see their hog-ate brother in hell. I do promise everyone in this God-forsaken land, which I live in that. True talk, white power. McDonald, the coroner and NAACP leader, heard that local KKK members began planning a retaliatory march, but none materialized. Ainsworth did not respond to this person's Facebook messages. Chief Horn also posted a photo on Facebook after the protest of a man hosing off some sidewalk chalk that said Rasheem's life mattered. Little cleanup, Horn wrote, along with a waving emoji. According to my anonymous source, this person who wrote the article, Horn is believed to be friends with Ainsworth and the other white man at the protest, who have both joined the chief for morning coffee in recent months at some local restaurants. Again, the good old boys club. A restaurant employee confirmed to this author that a handful of older men meet regularly in a coffee club, but the employee did not recall who the members were. The employee expressed sympathy for Rasheem Carter's family, added that customers are asked not to gossip about the case, and requested I not name the restaurant, fearing repercussions for the business. At the protest, Chief Horn stood in the road as the marchers passed. The large law enforcement presence behind him upset the family. The police had people from Jones County, Forrest County, Newton County, and even state troopers. But you could not give Rasheem Carter a ride 22 miles away because it was out of your jurisdiction, said his auntie. Everybody there that day crossed their jurisdiction and came to Taylorsville. From the very beginning, I don't like how they handled this case, said Rasheem Carter's mom, Tiffany, who adds that obtaining evidence from local and state investigators has been like pulling teeth. It's really me against all of them. After she received her son's bones as she prepared in February for his funeral, she felt so frustrated that she struggled to speak with the author. Nobody really gives an F about my son, she said of the cops. After the funeral, Rasheem Carter's family was notified that law enforcement found more remains in another location. As the state crime lab examined whether the bones could be Carter's, the family thought of the video from the Taylorsville classroom and the student who joked about more of Carter's skeleton being buried in someone's yard. They hoped an autopsy report from the first set of bones might provide clarity, but there were so few remains that it was hard to draw conclusions when it was released in early March. Rasheem Carter's skeleton was greasy, according to the report, and his family said it was covered with a sticky substance. Some of his bones were fractured at or near the time of death. A toxicology screening found no sign of drugs. The medical examiner added that the decomposition of Carter's body could have been caused by exposure to the element, and that one or more animals gnawed on some of his remains, though whether they were wild critters or domesticated hogs is unclear. The cause and manner of death remain undetermined. Independent medical experts consulted said the speed at which a body becomes a skeleton can depend upon the weather conditions, taking anywhere from weeks to years. It's possible for a person's remains to skeletonize within 30 days, more likely during the summer when the temperatures are hot and the air is humid. 1 month is pretty fast decomposition given the temperatures in Taylorsville during October when Rasheem Carter died, says Daniel Westcott, who leads the Forensic Anthropology Center at Texas State University. But it was warm enough there, he adds, that you can't rule it out. Other medical experts told me skeletons can lose their teeth, as Carter's did, due to natural decomposition. On the heels of the autopsy report, another rumor emerged. In early March, a friend in Taylorsville told Rasheem Carter's family that a man had been arrested in the case and that he was a former local law enforcement officer. For days, Rasheem Carter's auntie repeatedly called the sheriff to confirm the rumors, but she could not get through to him. The sheriff also did not return my calls, nor did police or Taylorsville city attorney, while the Mississippi Bureau of Investigations would not comment. Whether or not the rumors are true, they tell us something about Smith County, Mississippi, that memories of historic racist violence still loom large there, as does the modern-day threat of it, and that law enforcement's reluctance to share information with Rasheem Carter's family or the public has fueled confusion, cynicism, and fear among the black community. What I learned, says Tiffany Carter of local officials, is that none of them could be trusted. Now, I want to go back to this photo that was taken from this deer cam. Because I saw something today that really made me look at it a whole lot different. And I'm going to show it on the screen. And what it looks like to me, and what someone else has seen, is there are two people standing in that photo. And it looks just like Rasheem Carter is looking at one of them right in the face. They are standing off into the woods, and I will show you on the screen where. And you can go look at the photo for yourself. Just pull it up, Rasheem Carter's photo, deer cam photo, whatever you want to type in to find it. And just look at it. It is very interesting because it definitely looks like there are two people standing there looking right at Rasheem Carter. And it looks like he is looking at the one on the far right. This case has taken many turns. And it is very scary, to say the least. Small town in the South, this investigation is not going to go well until the Department of Justice steps in. That's just point blank, period. These local law enforcement, even the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, at this point, I wouldn't even trust them. They too could be infiltrated. I would definitely let the DOJ take a look at this case, and I would push and continue to push for them to do so. So I wanted to show you guys that picture and call your attention to it. And also, his boss, that he was working for, that he specifically mentioned in the text message, I have some information on him, and I will do a separate video on that because this has gotten way too long as it is. But definitely check this photo out and just study it and see if you see what I'm trying to get you to see. And I'm going to end the video on that note. Thanks for watching, guys. Justice for Rasheem Carter.